Hello there, welcome to Nowhere to Hide. I'm Brian Hyde. It was just a little over a month ago that we were told that a Qatari Air Force facility would be incorporated at Mountain Home Air Force Base, which was, I think, a surprise to a lot of us and raised a number of different questions and not a small amount of concern at the time. Well, it sounds like authorities have come forward and held a little press conference, talked to members of the legislature about what exactly is going on at Mountain Home Air Force Base. I've got details coming up about what's at stake and how this is testing Idaho's commitment to its state sovereignty.
All reporters are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot.
That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.
Once again, welcome to Nowhere to Hide. I know sometimes when it comes to questioning things that are happening with the Defense Department or happening with our armed forces, there's a tendency to think, look, when people are in harm's way, you don't ask these kinds of questions. But in this case, I think what we have with this Qatari Air Force Base, I'm gonna walk you back here a few weeks ago. This was from Disclosed TV, from a tweet that they posted. U.S. and Qatar signed deal to open a Qatari. Now look at the air quotes. Air Force facility in the U.S. at Mountain Home Air Force Base in Idaho. And I know at the time when this came out, there were a number of people, myself included, who were like, okay, wait a minute. Why aren't we training them closer to where they are? Right? The Middle East, the Persian Gulf. Why aren't we trying to train them closer to where they are? Why would they have to come here in order to do that? Now, I can't answer that. And as you'll see, sometimes the answer is, well, you just have to trust us on this. There's a lot of stuff we can't talk about. That's kind of the deal with the devil that we have with the the national security state, which essentially is supposed to be able to do things that, yes, even you and I we couldn't possibly know about, but it's ostensibly being done in our names, and therefore we do kind of have a stake in it. So let's go back to when this was announced back in October. The Idaho Freedom Foundation came right out and just said, look, we unequivocally condemn this action taken by the Department of War to unilaterally decide that Idaho will host a foreign nation's Air Force facility, which would house and train foreign nationals whose loyalties don't align with our own national and state interests, is a completely unacceptable overreach. This decision appears to have been made without consultation or consideration for the residents of Idaho or through our elected state representatives. And that's the key right here. Okay, I mean, look, yes, there are people in very high-paid positions and, who understand all the geopolitical nuances of what's going on, and they're paid to make these decisions. But the people who have to live with those decisions on the ground are the people here in the state of Idaho. At what point do we have a say in what is being done in our state and on our land? The Idaho Freedom Foundation, again, back in October, said Idaho should have the authority to determine who and what is allowed within its borders. The establishment of a long-term foreign military presence imposed by the federal government has the potential to cause catastrophic long-term consequences for the safety, security, and integrity of our state. Now, the Department of War's action is a flagrant disregard for the autonomy of our state and the security of its citizens. Now, I know people are like, well, are you just looking at the worst case scenario? Again, it's the idea that why is this being done without first, seeing to it, are you people okay with what goes on here? Since they have to live with the consequences. Anyway, we call on our state legislature, Governor Brad Little, and the citizens of Idaho who care about our state sovereignty to stand with us in this condemnation, and to demand that the Department of War immediately and permanently rescind this poorly conceived deal. On this topic, it's high time we terminate all foreign military, Qatar, Singapore, etc., training facilities in Utah. We must make every effort to keep the U.S. unentangled with these foreign militaries and keep Idaho sovereign. And here's the kicker. This is the part where I know I'm going to lose a few people, but I'm willing to take some criticism for saying this. The fact that the Department of Defense, the Department of War, now the Department of War, is saying, well, we need to have these kind of partnerships, whether it's with Qatar and their Air Force pilots or whatever. We need to have these because we don't know what conflicts we're going to be in the future. On the one hand, it's like, yeah, you really don't. You don't know what the future holds. On the other hand, if you had the intention of lots of mischief, lots of intervention in various places where you may or may not be wanted or needed, yeah, I could see it leading to more mischief. And that's, again, our military exists for the purpose of killing people and breaking things, but for the protection of American lives or American property. It's not for, just going out there and putting politicians' words into effect against recalcitrant nations that don't want to do what they're told. Nonetheless, let's go back. Let's talk about the press conference that took place. By the way, tip of the hat to Brian Allman with the Gem State Chronicle for going and covering this. But the Mountain Home Air Force Base wing commander briefed a legislative committee on the Qatari deal. Let's see how many of the concerns that were expressed earlier were addressed here. Colonel David Gunter, commander of the 366th Fighter Wing at Mountain Home Air Force Base, briefed the legislature's Interim Committee on Federalism on Thursday, answering questions regarding the recently announced training partnership with the nation of Qatar. Gunter told lawmakers the agreement had been under development since 2018. Well, there's a little surprise. Do you think anybody was consulted or would think that it was worth consulting? I'm curious. That's quite a time to be planning for this. And it will bring a phased rotation of Qatari airmen to Mountain Home. So they'll start with roughly 50 personnel. They'll grow it to about 300 by 2030, including U.S. airmen also assigned to the Joint Squadron. Now, all the facilities built for the effort will remain U.S. property. Okay, so that answers at least one concern people had. And they're funded as part of Qatar's purchase of F-15QA fighter aircraft. So this is part of a training deal. There's some money changing hands here. Now, Gunter emphasized multiple times that security and vetting are the core considerations and explained that the Department of War has well-established procedures for all foreign military personnel training in the United States, including background checks, access, restrictions, information security protocols. Some details, he said, could not be discussed publicly. And this is part of the, trust us, we do a really good job of vetting them. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is, Qatar has been associated with some of the conflicts in the Middle East, and sometimes it's not really clear who the good guys or the bad guys are. Sometimes there are no good guys. So do we want, their military personnel having, access to us, access to our tools and so forth? Just a question to ask. Now, several lawmakers, and this is at the state level, raised concerns about Qatar's record and its past links to terrorism. Representative Dale Hawkins from Fernwood said his constituents are uneasy about hosting Qatari forces. Cindy Carlson of Brigham said she wants her concerns about a partnership on the record. Gunter acknowledged the concerns, but he defended the program safeguards, describing his experiences working with Qatari counterparts as professional and reliable, which I'm sure they are, right up until the moment that they aren't. And we've seen it happen. It's not often, but sometimes, green on green, force things happened in Afghanistan and so forth. This is why, really, you save your military for times when it's needed, and not just to go out and promote this adventure or that adventure, which I think has been lost on a lot of our political leaders in DC for many years. Nonetheless, this was interesting to learn. The program is expected to run for 10 years, after which point Gunter said he couldn't speculate. So it's funded to run for 10 years, but after the hearing, Gunter spoke with Representatives David Levitt from Twin Falls, Kent Marmon from Caldwell, and Lucas Kaler of Caldwell, and said his staff would provide information for lawmakers who were seeking further details. Kudos to those lawmakers for going and getting some answers. And I'm going to put this this is kind of on you and me. We have to be willing to do the same. And I hope it doesn't come across as you have to think this is a terrible thing, but you should be wondering, at what point should questions be asked? At what point should the people of Idaho have some kind of say? I mean, there's a reason why, we have separate and distinct states from a federal government. One last thought here for you. This is what happens when you don't ask. You find yourself in the position of this gentleman. I paid taxes for things you people wouldn't believe. Well, it looks like in part we're paying taxes to help bring members of the Qatari Air Force here to learn to fly and whatnot. But the question is that impinging on our sovereignty? Would we know if it was? I guess this is why we ask these questions. I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide.
All reporters are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
Indoctrination.
That's right.
Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot.
That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see.
Dark money is influencing policy in our state.
Well, that's not how this works.